Did you miss us? We missed last week. Sorry. It's Q&A week. We were out filming last week with Airflow USA, and so we didn't get this done. But we've had so many of the same question. I mean, relatively. It's almost the same question. And it's just, I don't know how many we've had, so we just took them all and grabbed one and lumped them because it was all pretty much exactly the same. So here's the question. This is from Brody Blood. And it truly is one of just dozens of the same question over and over. And it says, how long of leader to use when fishing articulated streamers off a 2 or a 250 grain streamer line? Do you build your own? What's your recipe, and what's the importance? The importance part of that is really critical, because the style of fishing that we do is pretty specific. We're not sweeping the river. What we do is we target specific zones. And so generally speaking, I would say we retrieve between 15 and 30 feet. Rather, if I'm on foot, it's even shorter than that. But in a boat, generally we're floating along and we're looking for specific zones. We're not just throwing the fly out and swinging it all over. We look for ledges, and we look for drops, and we look for, just places where the fish should be sitting. And then we deliver the fly and retrieve it perpendicular to flow so it comes straight across, not swinging downstream. And so the importance of the leader becomes really, really crucial, because we're not just swinging, we're not giving the fly a long time to sink. We're using a line to sink the fly, and then we're drawing that fly back across in front of the fish, and then we go right back. We try to hit, it's really tough if you're in a boat. It's not as hard when you're walking, obviously. But we try to hit every 3 foot of water. If there's 2 of us fishing, we try to just kind of stagger each other. You look for that person's line to hit, and then you go 3 foot behind that or whatever. But then you're looking for the ledges and then just the holding areas for the fish. So that makes the leader absolutely critical. I've got one right here, and this is the whole leader. I don't know if you can see that or not, but that's the whole leader. And the basic leader that we use, and everybody's got their own, but it all starts pretty simple. And you have to remember one thing about this leader. Forget all that turnover, all that crap about it, reduction in energy and all that stuff. You've got a big old fly on there, and you're casting really fast. You've got a heavier line that's delivering that fly, and really the fly itself is going to turn over. Your leader is not going to do it. So we start with a 20-pound butt section. This is 12 inches of 20-pound maximum. And then it goes to 18 to 24 inches, depending on, everybody has their own formula. I generally go 18 inches on mine. Johnny and Skinny and some of the guides, they run 24 foot. And that all can vary. It has to decide, where you want to, how deep you want the fly. One example when I lengthen mine up is if I'm fishing weed beds, I'll fish a longer leader, and I'll let the line drop down a little further, and the fly stays up above that. And that is the reason we use the short leader. Like I said before, we're hunting a specific zone. We're not just sweeping the river. We're throwing it out, and right there, right there's the fish. I see him. I not see the fish, but I see the zone, right? And so the sinking line pulls the fly down. If this leader is more than, say, 3 foot long, your fly is going to have a tendency to be above your fly line. I personally like my leader really short. That keeps, the shorter the leader is, the closer it is to the fly and the line. I'm using the line to get the fly down, so as this fly comes back behind it, it's tracking right where I want. The critical thing is I kept saying it, I'm not sweeping. I don't have time. Like I said, I'm going to have a 15, probably a big retrieve would be a 30-foot retrieve. So the fly line goes underwater, and I start retrieving immediately. If it's really long, if the leader's really long, it probably in 15 feet is never going to catch up to where the fly line is. So, it's going to float above it. So the shorter that is, the more accurate it's going to be to where the fly line is, and it's going to have a really short retrieve. 30 feet's a long retrieve for us, and that's still not a lot of time for the fly to catch up. So the idea here is to use a really short leader. Personally, I don't care if it gets down to 18 inches. That's fine. They do not look at your leader. You got a fly on like this. They're not looking at your fly line. They're not looking at the leader. They're coming up and they're attacking your fly. So the closer it is to the fly line, the more accurate it's going to be as far as where you place it. Because your fly line, you're telling the fly line, You know, if you take off really quick, that fly line might only be that deep. You wait a second or two, fly line's going to be that deep. They float, you know, they sink about 6 inches a second if there's no pressure on them, if nobody's pulling on it, right? So if you just stop, you're going to get down here. The closer the fly is to the line, the more accurate that's going to be to retrieve. When it comes to floating lines, all this short leader stuff goes out the window. Now you've got to go to a longer leader because the tippet diameter has to be thinner because the flies, the weight of the fly dictates how deep it gets in the water column. So the short leader would impact that adversely. It would slow it down. So generally when I'm running a floating line, I use a 7.5 foot leader, OX, and I add tippet to that. Remember, the thinner the tippet is, the easier the fly is going to sink. That's why we don't use the heavier 12-pound type Maxima on those, because it's just a little thicker and it slows your fly down. So generally for me, I use OX, just a 7.5 foot leader. Remember, the last 30 inches or so of an extruded leader, even a 7.5 or a 9, that's all tippet. So it's all the same diameter. So I take a 7.5 footer, I add 3-4 foot off the end of that, and I don't use floaters very often, so I might use the same leader all summer. Just add tippet when it gets there. Johnny likes to use a 9-foot OX. The thing that's the same on all of them is that the tippet's longer and that it allows you to let the fly sink because you don't have a sinking line that's going to pull the fly down. So the bottom line is on a floating line, it's still going to be about the same length. I mean, I'm using a 7.5 and adding 3 foot. John's using a 9 foot. You know, we're within a foot of each other on those. But it's basically the same premise. You're going to have a longer tippet, which is going to be thinner than like the 12-pound Maxima, and so it's going to allow the fly to sink quicker. And that's going to keep that fly a little bit deeper on your retrieve. So review on the sinking lines, 12 inches of 20-pound butt, 18 to 24 of 12-pound tippet. Answer the phone. And on the other ones, it's going to be a 7.5 foot with 3 foot of tippet added to it, or a standard OX 9-foot leader. That's going to allow the fly to sink at the right speed. Hope that helps you out. Thanks. Oops, forgot again. Thanks, Brody, for bringing this in. This is the third time I forgot to say this. Question and answer week. Forgot to say thanks to Brody and to tell everybody when you send these in, if we use it, we send you a hat and a box of flies. And we really, I mean, like I said, we get a lot of them. They're usually kind of the same, so sometimes we pick them, but keep them coming because it really helps us out to have something people are asking about, and it just makes it easier on me, and I need all the help I can get, as you can see. Thanks.